Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's Wednesday, the 4th of June, 10:54 p.m. my time, which I think is Central or Mountain, one or the other. I can never friggin' remember, man. And I just worked myself into the podcast. No need to rush. I find, I don't know what it is, but just a certain weight to the days. And it's not a heaviness or an oppression or anything like that. It just seems to me as though time is moving a little bit heavy. I also find myself extremely lethargic. I get my work done. I guess you could say I get my work done, yeah. But I don't know, there just seems to be a certain weight to the days. And a kind of sort of Damocles situation, but I don't know what the sword is. I don't know who's holding it. And if you're not familiar with that expression, it just means, something foreboding is going to happen. I suppose you could say that everything is of God. God encompasses the negative and positive polarities, the negative and positive principalities and gods, regions, entities, and the negative and positive human collectives. It's all just the force of life, which is God. What I call God. So what that means is that everything is good. And I know it's hard to see it sometimes, but sometimes the only way you can stay positive is to remember some of the spiritual principles that run this place and are foundational to our reality. And one of those foundational rules is that everything is of God. And I guess this ties into the apathy and detachment podcast that I did, which I really enjoyed, by the way. I thought that was a pretty good concept for a podcast and a pretty good delivery. Apathy and detachment. It's a strange contradiction being human. It's like you have to walk right through that ironic mirror and see both sides. You have to be 100% detached from outcome and 100% committed to the moment, which makes it very difficult to cultivate detachment to outcome, because that level of commitment to the moment is an investment. But you can't become attached to the outcome. You have to stay detached to it. That may be about one of the best lines about life I've ever uttered. And I would say everything good I've ever done in my life has come about through that paradigm. 100% commitment to the moment with complete detachment to the outcome. That's how I write the books. That's how I do this podcast. That's how I live. Sometimes I get a little bummed. About my home country now, Canada. I know a number of you who listen to me are Canadian. And I guess it's like, it's not that I don't think that the negatives have a right to try to do what they're doing. They absolutely do. This is a free will space, and these exchanges between negativity and positivity propel growth. I guess what I'm finding disturbing in my Canadian brethren is how thoroughly programmed they have been, and how unbelievably lost the Canadian collective is. This is assuming the election was fair, and I think it was for the most part, or for the whole part. I shouldn't even say for the most part. I think Canadians are that stupid that they would put in a guy like Mark Carney. For those of you who are not Canadian, the only population out there that is even close in terms of stupidity would be Australia and New Zealand. And I think even New Zealand's a little bit better, but I don't know enough about New Zealand. But we seem to be like the trial balloons for every whack job thing going on. Australia and Canada is, a couple meters ahead of Australia now in this 400-meter relay race for the stupid championship, the stupid gold medal. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, has already spent, and he just got into office, and there's been no budget in place since the spring of 2024. Canada has no budget, okay, which means no accountability to the public. He's already spent $500 billion, okay? $500 billion Canadian would be about 400 billion US. That's not small money. I mean, we're only a nation of like 40 million people. We're not like the US. We don't have hundreds of millions of people. And I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at what Starmer's doing. And this is the old, I don't know what Trump's up to, man. I don't know whether he can stop these people or not. They may be too well entrenched, this. And they're all the same kinds of people. Every time you think, oh, this is new. Nope. They try to change it up a little bit to fool you, like the Carmel Catamite, Barry Soretto, a.k.a. Barack Obama. Oh, he's different. Hope and change. No. Same fucked in the ass as a kid bullshit. Same secret society bullshit. Same CIA mind control. Who knows at this point what else? Alien hybridization. Whatever the hell they got going on behind the curtain. They're all the same. And Mark Carney's one of them. Yeah, massive ties between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, with specifically Carney's wife. Massive connections. In my lifetime, I've never seen a sitting British monarch, head of state. For most of my life, it was the Queen Elizabeth. Now it's King Charles. I have never seen a head of state come for the opening of Parliament speech. And he did this time for Mark Carney. Now, Mark Carney was the governor of the Bank of England, right? That in itself is very rare. The administrators, we call them governors in the Commonwealth. You call them chairman of the Fed in the U.S. system. But the administrator of a national central bank is always from the local population. It's almost like being president or prime minister. You have to have been born in the country and raised in the country. And yet they recruited Mark Carney for the position of governor of the Bank of England, and specifically to overspend and cripple the economy. That's what he does. He's a wrecking ball. These people have been brought in to destroy, not to build. Not to destroy, not to create. And this is what I mean. I mean, this is why I say it's not rocket science. It's not hard to see. You don't have to have a doctorate in economics or international relations or diplomacy or foreign policy. You just, you could be a construction worker with a high school education. You take 2 steps back and you go, that guy's destroying the country. And he seems to be doing it deliberately. But he says all these things, you know? All these trigger words that just, the programmed just fall for it every time. So we're going to pick up imagination tomorrow, okay? And tonight, I want to do a podcast on the soulless. I know, eh? Pretty heavy topic. The soulless. And this was an idea that was put down in some, I guess you could say, some manuscripts in the early part of the 20th century. It was an idea that was moving around in certain circles. Carl Jung talked about it a little bit. Rudolf Steiner talked about it. Madame Blavatsky talked about it. Now, if you're Christian and you want to run away from this podcast right away because I just dropped those names, please don't. Okay? I am a bona fide, unified systems contemplative, meaning I believe in one creator, same as you. But I don't believe every idea out there is of the devil and I should isolate it or push it back. You know, this ridiculous Middle Ages fear-mongering that's going on in the Christian community now. My God, it's fucking ridiculous. So, to be clear, I don't think people can be born soulless. You may ask yourself at this point, well, why am I doing a podcast called The Soulless? Because it's an interesting concept and people can appear to have or be without a soul. But it's not that they've lost their soul or anything. It's just that the consciousness in the body has lost, like it's a total severance or connection with the higher being. Okay? And that, of course, in a sense, this is an adjunct to the Reality of Imagination podcast series that I'm doing. Part 1 in the can. But it's a little bit different and a little bit unique, okay? So, come on, you piece of shit. No, thank you. There we go. So probably the person who gave them the most attention was Madame Blavatsky, but her writing on it wasn't seen until the 90s. She put a 100-year seal on it and said the world will not be ready for this message for 100 years. I think she wrote it in like 1890 or something. And then in the 1990s, it was released to the world in some measure. Now, Blavatsky is... I always note if a person is Jewish. And please don't think ill of me. Please don't think I'm an anti-Semite. But the reason I say that is there is so much epigenetic occult programming in the Jewish bloodlines that it is a let's make a metaphor here. Let's say that you're working with Adobe Photoshop or GIMP. The acknowledgement or awareness that they're Jewish is like a color correction filter you have to process their message through. Okay? That's the kindest way I can say it. But there's such a culture of... it depends on how you look at it. Some people would say they're fearless, and fearless is good. Some people would say that they're the ultimate consciousness explorers, and exploration is natural human behavior. I don't think I could disagree with that. But they gravitate to a lot of dark stuff. Now, you could say, hey, Bruce, what about you? Are you not the author of The Light of Darkness and the Devil in Us? Yeah, I am. So, maybe I could say that, Anyways, my point will prove out when I get into this, but Madame Blavatsky was a Russian Jew, and she emigrated to the UK. Um, I'm not sure what her opinion when she died. I can't remember. I don't. Well, let's look it up. I mean, what am I doing here, right? What the heck? When was Madame Helena Blavatsky born, and where? And how old was she when she died, and where? I just love this AI, right? I mean, she was born August 12th, 1831. Wow. In Yekaterinoslav, Ukraine, which is now called Dnipropetrovsk. She died on May 8, 1891 in London, age 59. Not a long life. Okay? People involved in the occult and shamanic practices generally don't live that long. I don't know. Is that easily understood, or do I, And the reason is you make a lot of enemies, and they always have mysterious deaths. Okay, that go-to guy I always use as my example, Andrew Bartzis, is a case in point. By the way, that's not him. His physical body is still here. That's not him anymore. That's a whole other story. And we're not supposed to be tinkering in the gaps. A human life was created to redirect consciousness toward the divine, toward the ocean of love and mercy. We're not, we have free will, we can do all these things, but look, I'll explain it to you this way. You can live the life of a limited consciousness, sense mind individual for millennia. In fact, probably tens of thousands of years. The Creator will give you an almost unlimited number of incarnations to learn your lessons. You want to be a gangster, you want to murder people, you want to be a warlord, you want to be a war hero. All these sort of dramas that go on down here, which flesh out the soul, they're completely allowable. And in some sense, you could say they're even encouraged. And it's a learning process. Okay? Now, when you get into the consciousness game, and you go up in consciousness, and you don't even have to go that high, like just astral or causal, and you bring any of that human competition energy to that level of consciousness and use what the creation and the Creator have allowed you to see for impulses and motivations that are generally rooted in a sense-mind consciousness, that's when the universe makes an example out of somebody. And it's very ugly to see. It's very sad to see. I've seen it a number of times in my life. You could say even to a certain extent, even John Edmonds was an example of that. As I told you, John Edmonds was a first-gen super soldier. And John was completely psychically lit up as well. Okay? And all of these super soldiers have generally, none of them live that long. And anybody who lives a life steeped in the occult will not grow old. Okay? There might be a few exceptions here and there, but generally they will not. But the exception, the person who is the exception, they've probably scapegoated a lot of other human beings to extend their life. Okay? You can believe me or not believe me, but I think those of you who've been with me a while now, like 6 months or a year, you know I'm telling you the truth. Why would I make this up? What's in it for me? I'm telling you the truth. I feel the need to say that sometimes because the things I say are so outrageous and they're not based in any science. I'm not like one of the Weinstein brothers talking about established and normative physics or evolutionary biology theory. I'm just a guy speculating on a hypothesis is all. She says, I know I don't know nothing. So I'm not surprised Blavatsky died at 59. Generally, you don't want to tinker in the occult that long, okay? None of those people live long. None of them. And by long I mean 80, 90, or 100, okay? Now, you can be a spiritual leader like the woman on the reserve here. She's about somewhere between 130 and 140, and she's a shaman. But I think she has a firm understanding of cosmic moral law, and she doesn't break it. Okay? Very few people can ascend in consciousness and not be tempted to use the siddhis to break the rules, to aggrandize themselves. Okay? It's kind of sad. Just in the last 5 or 6 years, I've seen it about a half dozen times. Okay? And every generation of human beings produces people who live out this incarnation template. Tinker with the occult and pay a horrible price. And the partial down payment on the horrible price is their early death, their unfulfilled lives. The true price they pay goes on for multiple lives afterwards, because it's a heavy karma. Because the way the universe looks at it, you should know better. You should know better. We gave you higher consciousness to be of to be of benefit to your time and your generation, and you used it to aggrandize yourself. And you used it for negative black magic purposes and self-aggrandizement. The universal forces and the various representatives of it do not like that. I'll tell you right now. You just, generally speaking, when it comes to spiritual matters, you want to think like a Muslim. And the word Islam means submission. Okay? Submit to the divine. Submit to the rules. Chastise yourself, humiliate yourself, humble yourself. Don't build yourself up with psychic or mystical powers. Okay? It never ends well. Never ends well at all. Ever. So Blavatsky, I'm not surprised. Now, she was actually from Ukraine. I think she spoke Russian. And she died in London. So if she published her work on the Unsold in 1890, that was the year before her death. So that was she probably saw her death coming. Do you know that she smoked a pound of tobacco a day? Mm-hmm. Madame Blavatsky smoked a pound of tobacco a day. Do you know how big a bag that is? So those of you who understand tobacco, if you go out and buy some of that cigarette rolling tobacco in one of those little pouches, that might be 2 ounces, an ounce and a half, 2 ounces. Let me check. What's the weight of a typical pouch of consumer tobacco for cigarette rolling? I love this AI, man. It's amazing. 30 grams. The weight of a typical pouch of consumer tobacco for cigarette rolling varies, but common sizes include 30 grams. Okay? How much is 30 grams in standard measurement?
30 grams is 0.0661 pounds.
Wow. So 1,000 grams in a kilo. So 0.06, not even a full 0 decimal. Holy cow. How many grams in a pound? 453.
453.592 grams.
Thank you very much, Google. So if the average pouch of tobacco is 30 grams, now those of you who've ever smoked, you know that one of those pouches of drum tobacco will last you 2 or 3 days. And that's if you're lighting up a smoke every 35, 45 minutes, right? And well rolled, like not cheaping out on the tobacco. And Madame Blavatsky smoked a pound of tobacco a day. That's almost inconceivable. You know who else was crazy for the tobacco? Sigmund Freud. He smoked a box of cigars a day. He had to have multiple operations in his lifetime on his throat because of his cigar smoking. It's amazing, right? As you get in, and heavy vices like that are a clear indication of a profound imbalance. And of course, we now know that, Freud was a profoundly imbalanced person, probably a satanic pedophile and just everything under the sun, right? And Blavatsky as well was a relatively imbalanced person. All right, so let's get to this. So the core assertion of Blavatsky's manuscript, which was sealed for 100 years, is that the existence of functional beings with human appearance who have never housed a soul. So I was wrong. It's not that they lose connection with their soul. It's that they never housed a soul. And remember, she was not the only one saying this. All right? Now, so why do I run things through the Jewish filter? Well, because the rabbis have been saying for centuries now that a time will come where this could be a cover story, a pseudo-spiritual or religious cover story for mass murder and taking over the world, which clearly the rabbis want to do now. And don't call me an anti-Semite if you haven't done at least 30 minutes of research on this in YouTube. Just go Israel Rabbi on YouTube and just listen to them, okay? Amalek has to die, and that's us, by the way. Edom, everybody has to die. And it's all based on this bizarre genealogy and bloodline stuff. And how is the world run now? Well, it's run by bloodlines, nefarious bloodlines that are not openly declared monarchies, okay? Probably the only non-bloodline institution on the planet, I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. The only non-bloodline institution on the planet of any weight is the Vatican. And I say that because I don't see any clear genetic or ancestral connection between the popes. You're not going to tell me this guy Leo was somehow related to Pope Francis. Pope Leo was related to Pope Francis. But everything else is bloodline related. So if I were an evil genius and I wanted to wipe out the world, I might seed the story out there through a source like Blavatsky or Steiner, both Jewish, by the way, that there are unhoused vessels out there. Okay? Because it makes it, well, why are you killing those people? They're not really people. It's not homicide. They don't have souls. They're like organic robots. I didn't murder anybody. It's not a spiritual crime. Think about it. It's a brilliant cover story when you think about it. Nonetheless, let's stay with this, okay? These are referred to as vessels without light, or mental cocoons that have lost the thread of the divine spark. Okay, see, that's different. Okay, so if you've lost the thread of the divine spark, it means that you did house a soul at some point. Okay, so you got to be very careful and watch the language very, very carefully. Now, she goes through a very, I'm going to give you a high-level overview of this manuscript, okay? And she goes through a very, very detailed, almost scientific definition of the soulless, okay? And it begins with the nature of the soulless. And so they are described as absences, reacting to the world, but not truly feeling it. They are said to mimic and echo those with souls, implying a lack of genuine inner experience. So no internal dialogue, no imagination. Okay? No imagination. So this is an ancillary podcast to the Reality of Imagination series, okay? It is ancillary. Blavatsky posited that these individuals have lost or never had an intrinsic connection to a higher divine essence. So it's one or the other. They lost it or they never had it. Okay? I would say they lost it because I don't see how you could be born without a soul. Although I'm reminded of the story of Cynthia Crawford's twin sister that they had to put down, Susan Crawford. And I don't know, from what I've heard, she was pure evil. And this is like, these would be like CIA deep state people saying this thing's too evil to keep in existence. We got to put it down, which makes you wonder, how fucking evil could she have been, right? Because those guys have a pretty wide berth when it comes to evil. So the identification of the soulless, and there's physical mannerisms and behaviors by which, according to Blavatsky, but it's not just Blavatsky, like I said, it's Carl Jung to a certain extent, and it's Rudolf Steiner, and there are probably others, but this is all I was able to research today preparing this podcast. And I guess this podcast came to me because I've been starting to feel this myself. Now, remember, my information comes to me intuitively. I mean, I've done a lot of study, I've done a lot of esoteric reading of the holy books, reading of the discourses of various masters who've lived and died, including the Gospels. But more and more, like the last decade or so, all of my knowledge comes to me intuitively and spiritually. And I started picking up on this, I don't know how long ago, maybe a year. But slowly, but it's been gaining ground. This could be part of the weight I've been feeling lately, is this realization, because it's very disconcerting to say the least. There's also some ideas out there that some groups of people are born and they just share one soul. Like their level of individuation is not enough that they can have their own soul. Okay? So, physical mannerisms of the soulless. Regular blinking, regardless of external stimuli. Regular blinking. Pupils that dilate mechanically rather than in response to genuine emotion or interest. That's freaky. A slightly cooler body temperature. That's freaky. Real freaky. Emotional and psychological traits. Emotional flatness or a lack of genuine emotional depth. I don't trust anyone I never see get angry. I think anger is a horrible emotion and spiritually toxic, but it's completely natural to human beings. And you don't have to get into a raging fit, like some Irishman on St. Paddy's Day at 2:00 in the morning in Dublin. And that's not what I mean by angry, but just like cursing when you're fixing a car or something. Fuck, when a nut or a bolt drops. A spontaneous human emotion. I don't trust people who don't have it. Look at our politicians. The only one I've seen who really has it in my whole life is Trump. That's one of the reasons I like him. Because I don't know what he's up to. I don't know who he's aligned with. But I'll tell you this. That fucker's human. And he's got a soul. That's all I can tell you. Is that dude is human. Okay? And I'm not sure about all the other leaders. I don't think Justin Trudeau is. I don't think Mark Carney is. I don't think Joe Biden is. I don't think Bill Clinton is, not fully human anyways, okay? I think the whole blowjob story in the White House was just a cover story to make Bill look human. He's one of us, right? Why would he have to have Monica Lewinsky blowing him in the White House when his wife is in the largest satanic coven in Virginia and they have hundreds of sex slaves at their disposal? Doesn't make any fucking sense. When you know a little bit about the inside detail of how these people live, then you know what you're talking about, right? An inability to truly appreciate beauty unless it aligns with social conventions. Now, this is one that really gets me. Not only do I align with beauty, I've been trying to produce it my whole life. You know? I had a friend, my friend in Panama, finish the novel I published in Canada in 2007. He sent me a long note and he said, I don't know why, but I cried at the end in a section of the book called Purple Flowers. And I thought, yeah, man, that's because you're a human being and it's beautiful. And real beauty arrests us. It's one of the attributes of God. It's not, beauty's not on OnlyFans. It's not on Pornhub. It's a spiritual thing. Okay? And they've just, yeah. So an inability to truly appreciate beauty unless it aligns with social conventions. When speaking of childhood memories, they tend to fabricate details rather than genuinely recall them, suggesting an internal emptiness regarding personal history. Kind of reminds me of Rachel and Roy Batty in Blade Runner, right? The Nexus 6 replicants. Here's a critical one. They do not dream, or their dreams are described as being without light, faces, or voices. Blavatsky documented their sleep patterns, noting no signs of typical dream states. And when awakened, they either report nothing or invent dream tales. Now, Blavatsky estimated that these soulless individuals constitute 17 to 23% of the population. Now, remember, this is 1890. Okay? This is 1890. I'll remember that point. I'll come back to that point later on in the podcast. A significant part of the manuscript's content addresses the idea that these soulless beings unconsciously drain the energy of those with souls. Vampires. But true vampires. See, vampires really exist, but you don't find bite marks on your neck or your ankle. Okay? You just, when you're around them, there's a kind of fatigue you get. You can't concentrate. They're just sucking in that loosh. They're just sucking in your spiritual energy because they don't have any of their own. They're like walk-ins in this universe. They don't belong here. Bizarre. This draining is described as subtle at first, leading to symptoms like cooling extremities and disorientation. Fingers and toes would be your extremities. And if prolonged, it can result in chronic fatigue, emotional numbness, and what Blavatsky termed soul sleepiness. Hospitals, government offices, and educational institutions are specifically mentioned as places where this draining effect is common. Full stop. Okay? This, I think, is the most important point. Now, she's talking about bureaucracies in 1890. Now, what was the 20th century? If you were to, it was many things. You could say it was the century of war. We had but what really, when you take 3 steps back for the widest possible lens perspective on the 20th century, what was it? What was it really trying to do, the 20th century? What were the wars about? Would be the question that answers what was the 20th century trying to do. It was trying to determine what kind of social organization would prevail. So we had basically 3 principal expressions, okay? Monarchy had already been destroyed by this time. The 17th and 18th century were about the destruction of monarchies. That's what happened when the banking came in England. Okay? It's the same force. It's the same, this soulless force, let's call them, is the same force that Bob and I are describing in The Light of Darkness. Same people, same force. Okay? So the monarchies are gone, and the 20th century is about what? Which form of social organization will prevail? And does it really matter which one prevails? Maybe the goal was to create so much trauma and bloodshed that we would accept a global enterprise on any terms if they promised peace. If that was just like William Cooper said in that clip I played a few podcasts back. It's just like that. So the three main forms of government were communism, capitalism, and fascism. Okay? And fascism was generally associated with strong racial hegemony and a long and proud cultural history. So you got the Japanese and the Germans backing fascism. I don't think fascism is a really bad thing, actually. I don't think people really understand what it is. I realize I say a lot of outrageous things on the Telemaker Review. But you know why? Because I'm sold. And most of the people you listen to speak in public spaces are unsold. You think Anderson Cooper is sold? You think Don Lemon is sold? No. No, they're not. They're not sold at all. Okay? They're classic. Most of the people in the Mockingbird media system in the West are unsold people. And I don't know. I mean, I live on a mountain in an earthbag house in the rainforest. How could I possibly give you an estimate of how many unsold people there are now? But based on the last Canadian election and other things I see going on in the world, which, as I said, you don't need advanced degrees to figure out are wrong if you're sold, I'd say the unsold are somewhere between 40 and 70% now. I'd say the actual fully individuated, spiritually animated, imaginatively lucid percentage of the population now is about 30%. 30, 40, maybe 45%. 30, 40, somewhere between there. Okay? And a minority. And I don't think they're generally associated with any one culture, any one region of the world. So if you're sold, everywhere you go in the world, you will meet other sold people. So when I went to Taiwan, I met sold people there. If you're soulless and you go and you travel, the other soulless will gravitate toward you. So everyone I live with on this mountain is sold. They're sold. I know they're sold. I've been at funerals with them. They're sold. Their emotions are real. They're not faking them. Okay? So we've reached a point now where the institutions, what you call departments in the United States and ministries in the Commonwealth, have become the principal energy leeches in the society now. They're literally, rather than serving their people, they're actually harvesting the energy off the people. And it's every institution now. It's law, it's medicine, it's education. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Yeah. Now you know why I say things like, in our time, meditation and spiritual practice is not a lifestyle choice, it's a martial art. I mean, if you're not in the spiritual game now, it's only a matter of time before you're consumed. And if you're a baby boomer and you're listening to me, you may skate out, but your kids and your grandkids won't. And you have an obligation to set a spiritual example for them and practice spirituality. And again, The Talamanca Review does not advocate any one path. I have met spiritually illuminated Christians. I have met and personally known spiritually illuminated Torah Jews. I have met and known spiritually illuminated Muslims, okay, of generally in the mystical school of Sufism, but even outside of that, I've met really good and well-souled people in Islam as well. Met them in Buddhism, met them in Taoism, met them in other paths. It's not about any idea, ideology, or dogma, okay? This is where I differ from the Christians. I agree with what the enlightened Christians are saying to about 90% now, but there's that 10% where I just have to go my own way because they just kind of go fucking crazy. If it ain't Christ, it ain't right, you know. And there's a lot of them out there like that now, and it's kind of sad to see actually. But anyways, so hospitals, government offices, and educational institutions are major energy harvesting areas. And she's saying this in 1890. Specific physical symptoms of energy depletion include a coolness in the center of the chest, slight pressure behind the eyes, and momentary difficulty remembering simple words, prompting a recommendation for immediate withdrawal and 3 sacred breaths. So she gives a protection remedy here. Very interesting. She says that to counter this energy drain, there's a soul fortification ritual, a 12-minute daily practice performed at dawn facing east. It involves a specific breathing pattern, 4-4-8 counts. Okay? Visualization of amber light. Amber is a honey yellow, I guess. Recitation of a secret mantra, which, when deciphered, means I remain. This mantra is believed to strengthen the soul's anchor to the body. Blavatsky warned that without this protection, even initiates could be extinguished. Future predictions. The manuscript contained predictions about the 21st century. All right. So she died in 1891, so she skips 100 years and goes 100 years into the future, into our century. Okay? An increase in soulless beings. Only those who strengthen their souls would energetically survive. Materialistic civilization would lead to disconnected, functional but hollow masses with mechanical thinking becoming dominant. And by materialistic, she means us, the West. Okay? New technologies, mass media, computational systems, and a concept resembling the internet would accelerate this process by externalizing consciousness. Society would begin to reward those without inner light. Lady Gaga, all of these satanic Hollywood and music industry people, okay? Puff Daddy. I mean, can you honestly say these things aren't going on now? I can't. Society would begin to reward those without inner light, and traditional soul-nurturing practices would be devalued. A hint at a second, more advanced type of soulless being capable of perfectly mimicking feelings, making them almost impossible to identify without specialized esoteric training. So the manuscript was called Vessels Without Light, and it presents a hidden reality of human existence, and it suggests a significant portion of the population lacks a fundamental spiritual component and can subtly drain the vitality of others while also offering a specific method of protection for those who possess a soul. Now, to add to that in my own distinct way, I would say that there's no imagination in the soulless. So you could do imaginative exercises with them. The way to flesh them out would be to do imaginative exercises, right? That's the way you flesh them out. Vessels without light, ladies and gentlemen. So I guess that's tonight's podcast. And let's title it Vessels Without Light. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.